welcome to InFocus Recouched. Get ready to see some awesome highlights from the InFocus back catalogue, including an interview with two bona fide frontier missionaries, some helpful hints on painkillers, and a bit of hippie folk music with Kent.
Whoa, no, it was my parents who were into that rather than me. But yeah, I got to meet one of their old friends who was involved with the whole Jesus People movement of the 60s and 70s. First up though, one of my favourite foods in the whole world, honey.
Oh, look, this honey's really sweet. You know, it's just amazing honey, don't you love it? Now, there's more than 181 fantastic natural ingredients in most honey, Sue, isn't there?
That's
Help
right.
me out while I lick my lips. Tell me about it.
Well, James, there's been a controversy for many years in terms of whether sugar is better than honey or vice versa. But we now know that actually honey far exceeds any potential benefits you might obtain from sugar for at least three reasons. Let me run you quickly through these. Number one, it's now been considered that honey is like a natural antibiotic ointment.
And it has been for thousands of years, even in ancient times.
Yeah,
they knew
so
this,
you
didn't
can
they?
use it on burns, on wounds, on non-healing ulcers, and it depends on the honey because some honeys are more powerful than others, but it basically speeds up the healing of these wounds, causes less scarring, and some studies show it's actually more effective than antibiotics, or in other studies it shows that it increases or enhances the effectiveness of certain antibiotics, in particular to those resistant species such as what's called golden staph, which is very resistant in hospitals. Certain honeys can actually eradicate that.
I never knew this until I spoke to Sue this morning. That is, honey actually has a hydrogen peroxide effect inside the body. Tell us about it.
Well, certain honeys can, such as Manuka honey.
That's the
they're
special
not only
honey.
high in phytonutrients, but they have an enzyme inside them which promotes a slow release of hydrogen peroxide, which kills the bugs. That's why it has the antibacterial
I
properties.
thought it was amazing. So even the ancient Egyptians were putting it on their wounds.
Well, they knew something. The second reason that I think honey is much more powerful than any type of sugar is because they've shown, certainly in studies with kids, that if you've got a respiratory infection, taking just a spoonful, say half an hour before bed, eases cough.
It helps the coughs.
In kids.
Yes,
and in fact, the US Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization now recommend honey as an anti-cough substance.
Yeah, and tell us about the antioxidants as well.
Well, here's another exciting area. Everyone knows that fruit and veggies are high in antioxidants, but on a weight per weight basis, they've shown that honeys compare very well to fruit and veg. So if you want to take an antioxidant supplement rather than popping a pill, just have some good honey.
Now, I never knew this before. Again, I'm learning so much this morning. Did you know that not all honeys are equal and some honeys have a very low GI?
That's
in fact,
right.
they're way better than sugar.
That's right. So the pure floral sources of honey, so in
I'm
Australia,
going to pick up one.
the ones that have been tested include stringy bark, and that's iron bark, or yellow
ironbark
box.
honey.
They have a much lower GI, glycemic index, than sugar, so they'd be suitable for people with diabetes or pre-diabetes.
So a single source honey has a lower GI.
That's right. Rather than those blended honeys that you tend to find for a cheaper price in the supermarket, they tend to have a GI higher than sugar.
And the Australian honey, of course, has none of the overseas kind of stuff that you don't know what's happening with it.
Well, this is one of the things that beekeepers have been concerned about for some time, because we know that when they blend honeys from overseas, some of those overseas honeys have been found to contain residues of antibiotics and pesticides that are banned in Australia. So if you want a good all-rounder that's absolutely 100% Australian, that you can buy in major stores, supermarkets, Beechworth is an example of that.
I got excited. I was thinking my family thinking, wow, support Australian products, and you know it hasn't got overseas stuff in it.
That's right, James.
Just Australian honey, Now, looking at these, we've got medicinal honeys. Tell us a little bit about them.
So, for quite some time now, for 45 years, researchers have been fascinated by the fact that not all honeys are the same. Some are much more potent in terms of bacteria and viruses than others.
Particularly famous.
Manuka's particularly famous, comes from New Zealand. Very expensive, but you use it as a medicine, and as I say, can be more powerful than even antibiotics. But we've actually got, James, now in Australia, a type of honey that is going to be our Manuka type honey, called jellybush.
This is it, jellybush honey.
Also has very high levels of these phytonutrients and is now seen to be effective in eradicating all kinds of bugs. So you can use it medicinally, topically on wounds that don't heal. You can take it to prevent a cough, or just as a good all-rounder antioxidant
And if you want a
supplement.
low GI honey, Like I've got on my hand still from before. Don't look, folks. I'm going to lick the rest of it. But Sue, thank you so much. That's my clean hand. Thank you so much this morning. It's just so fascinating to hear about honey, isn't it?
Yes.
Honey as medicine. Who knew?
Yeah, well, not me. I mean, fascinating stuff though. All those different varieties and flavours. Man, I need to get into it even more, I reckon.
I reckon. Yum. Stay with us. We'll take a quick break now. We'll be back in a sec.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Hi, welcome back. Now, these days, church workers who take a job overseas often live on an established college campus or maybe work in a city hospital. But are there any of those old school missionaries left? You know, the ones that live in the jungle with remote tribes?
Yes. Let's take a look.
It's a pleasure to welcome Laurie and Stephen Erickson to the set. They are missionaries in the western province of New Guinea, and they're really out in a very, very remote area. And so thanks so much for being with us. It's kind of must be a big culture shock to come from New Guinea. You just flew in last night, and blam, you're on our set. It's a little bit different, isn't it?
That's right. It's good to be here with you. Thank you. And we are working in the Western Province near the town of Balimo, which is a government station. Right. And there are about 30,000 people in this area. The people group we're working with are Gogodala. They speak the Gogodala language.
Right. So New Guinea has a lot of different language groups. Right. Are you able to communicate using Pidgin or English, or how do you communicate?
Our people actually speak English as a trade language.
Okay,
Many
great.
people in Papua New Guinea speak Pidgin, but ours do speak English, so that helps us out. But
Sure.
we are trying to get their language learned too.
So tell me what these what the local people do for a living.
Well, they don't really work for a living. They are hunter-gatherers. So
Well, that'd be hard work, wouldn't it?
it's work for a living, but it's not.
It's easier than hosting television shows, let me tell you.
Money doesn't mean a lot to them.
Right,
so
sure.
the ladies are going out and making sago maybe 2 or 3 times a week in the bush, and it's beating the sago palm until they get a pulp. It's a starchy like flour that they get, and they make that every day to eat. Men will hunt. The ladies go fishing. And they do a little bit of gardening, but not a lot.
So it's basically what you find in the forest or the bush, and whether it's animals, fish in the river, and sago is a staple sort of starch or carb.
And everything takes longer there. So just the basics of finding food and building houses consumes all their time.
Sure.
They don't have time for a lot of the extraneous things that we do here in this
culture.
Not
a lot of Xbox playing or something like this.
No.
What's the electrical situation? Do you have electricity piped in and telephone?
We have a solar panel system on our house, and so we are off-grid out there.
Right.
And so we're totally, we have a generator to back up on the cloudy days.
Steve, you are originally from Michigan, both of you, and you gave up your life as an architect over there. You've moved all the way to New Guinea. I can't imagine more different places in New Guinea and Michigan, having been to both. That's about as far as you can get apart from each other. What drove you to go to New Guinea? What's your fundamental mission?
Okay. Well, first of all, we felt called by God, and that's a whole story in itself. But the work that we're doing in Papua New Guinea is church planting, and that's establishing Christian centers for people to worship, and I'm focusing on stories to the Bible stories really, I've found, have hit the people harder than in a deeper way than, say, proof text method of doing a Bible study. And so that's, in a nutshell, what we're doing.
So the biblical narrative has translated, of course, from the Middle East to Michigan, and now from Michigan to New Guinea. It's kind of a complicated transmission, but it worked,
they understand a lot of the Bible stories better than we do, because they're going to the well on a daily basis to get their water, and carrying buckets and
fishing.
Right, that's true. I'll make you fish as a man.
That's right.
All of a sudden, it's much more tangible.
That's right.
Real. You know, Laurie, you're a nurse.
That's right.
And so are you using those skills in this relatively remote area?
Absolutely. There's many opportunities to help people. Lots of tropical sores, snake bites, bush knife cuts that need to be sutured up, just diarrhea, sick babies, delivering babies.
There was a guy that showed up on our doorstep one day that had a laceration from, he was in a fight with his brother, and the whole side of his face was just kind of hanging.
Yeah, it was just cut from here
so maybe
to
the
here.
Cain and Abel story might resonate better. That's amazing. Now, you said snake bites. Are there poisonous snakes where you are?
Yes, some of the most deadly in the world.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you do? Like, someone comes in with a snake bite, you got antivenom?
We have taken charcoal powder and made a little paste with it, and I put it right on the snake bite, and then I also have them drink the charcoal and water, and then we'll take them off to the nearest hospital.
So how far is it to the nearest hospital?
It takes about 40 minutes to an hour with our dinghy.
Right, down the river.
Yeah, it's in the river, across some lagoons.
Right, wow.
This is the floodplains, and so sometimes half the year the water is high enough, there's shortcuts, we can get there faster, and the other half of the year it takes twice as long to get there.
Well, this is just really, when you say frontier missions, this really is frontier stuff. You have 2 daughters.
That's right.
Now, a lot of people would say, I'm not going to take my kids to a place like that. How have your children found it?
When we first presented the idea of being missionaries to them, they were just right on board, and they have been such a great asset. They've made friends with the local girls. They've helped start a little choir at one point. I just feel like they're a great blessing, and they've been very involved.
So, Steve, what kind of results are you seeing from your mission work?
Well, we're taking a long-term approach to this, so the results that we see are not huge baptisms right up first, but we are seeing some baptisms, but we're also seeing a deeper level of the people that we wouldn't have seen if we had just gone in with a 2-week evangelistic series and then be gone. We actually know these people personally, and we can see a change.
We have a small group meeting underneath our house every Sabbath for Sabbath school and church, and also a Bible study during the week. And the people that are coming, there's a lot of young people, and they're taking that information home and sharing it with their family. So there's a lot of growing interest in the village. Even though we just have a small, obvious group, there's probably many more being impacted.
And it's probably, you've been there 5 years, is that right? How long do you intend to stay?
Well, we haven't committed to any particular length of time other than just this is where the Lord has led, and we are career missionaries. So probably 10 to 12 years is the average length of stay.
It's an amazing story. Laurie and Steve, if you want to hear more about their story and also the story of other missionaries who are engaging in similar types of missions around the world, just go to the website that's right there on your screen.
Man, those guys are amazing. Did you hear what they said? Yeah, we'll probably be here 10, 12 years maybe.
Man,
Incredible.
That is serious commitment to any job, I reckon, let alone living out in the bush.
Yeah, I know. It makes you think, doesn't it? You know, how far would I go to share what's important to me with others? Time for a break now. Back in a moment.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hi, welcome back. That's our last ad break for this week's show because we just don't have room for any more. We're going to take a look now at two segments. One of them is a chat you had, Kent, with Genna Levitch about the Christian folk music scene of the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yeah. Peace out, man. But first up, let's take a look at what Doc Wright has to say about the health risks of various painkiller medications.
I think one of the most scary things in life would be to have a stroke because of the disability that comes with the doc.
Absolute disability can be a mild stroke or a horrible stroke. And it's a very, very disabling thing. We don't like it. We try and avoid it at all costs.
Now, today you have some information that maybe can help us avoid stroke,
absolutely.
At least the risk of stroke.
Yes, and as you know, on this program we bring you up-to-date newsy bits and pieces. This one comes from the Medical Journal of Australia, which is put out by the Australian Medical Association, the Doctor's Bible in Australia, and also read worldwide. And it has a scary story in it regarding analgesics or simple old painkillers.
Right.
Now, for many, many years up to the 1950s, simple old aspirin was considered the ideal drug, in inverted commas, of choice for fevers and pain. Very, very successful. However, they then started noting that folk were getting hemorrhages from aspirin, and at about the same time, another product became available called paracetamol, caused that Panadol, common in Australia, Tylenol in America, and various other names in various parts of the world. And this was a good painkiller, very, very good. However, it wasn't quite good enough for other people with back pains and chronic pains.
Joint problems and
absolutely. So the clever people then developed the NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the NSAIDs. The first one being stuff called ibuprofen, which is available under a whole variety of different names and trade names. Another one called naproxen, also with a variety of different trade names. These were very, very good. They reduced pain extremely well and seemed to be devoid of side effects. So more and more people took these, millions, tens of millions. Then they got very, very clever and got another variation of these called a COX-2 inhibitors. That was the general name of the family of medications. And then as more people took these, they started getting heart attacks and a whole lot of other horrible things.
Those are the COX-2 inhibitors.
That's right.
And there have been lawsuits over that, and some of them have been taken off the market,
They've
I think.
been ripped off the market, totally. And
but ibuprofen and naproxen are still with us.
They're still with us, okay, and they're very, very successful, generally speaking. However, according to a new report here, red flags are starting to be waved because some reports are saying, okay, they are starting to cause heart disorders, and the latest nasty report says that a certain number of people are going to get a stroke as a result, so they say, of taking the NSAIDs.
This is new research.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, that's published the other day in this journal. And this will start to get bigger and bigger as time goes on, as more people hear about it. You can buy this stuff over the counter, OTC, so we're suggesting to people, look, if you have aches and pains, go for the simple ones first, go for the Panadol, the Tylenol. That is first-line drug medication of first choice. If that doesn't work, please see your doctor, have a talk about it, and maybe take in limited doses these so-called non-steroidals. So the thing is, there is a risk. As long as you know the risks, the benefits got to outweigh the risks, so it's a case of who decides what to do, but the patient should be informed.
I'm here with a man who I'm really looking forward to chatting with, Genna Levitch. How are you?
G'day, I'm very fine, thanks.
Now, Genna, we discovered, talking just earlier, that, well, I discovered, you probably knew, that you went to school with my parents here in Sydney quite a number of years ago.
I did. I know both your mother and father quite well.
So in Sydney at the time, amongst young people in the Adventist church, there was a... Well, it was broader than the Adventist church, wasn't it?
It was broader.
60s and 70s.
There was a thing called the Jesus Movement, which started 68, 69, sort of at the end of the, I guess, the hippie era.
Costa Mesa, California, Calvary Chapel.
And it came to Australia as well, and as I was at university at the time, maybe 19 or so, and the Adventist young people wanted to do something like that as well, and it was street preaching. It was real stuff. It wasn't in churches. We didn't have the media things that we have these days.
Sure.
But on the street was great. We'd get on the back of a truck, talk in the street. There's a thing in Sydney called the Domain, which is a public area park, and you know, where you can.
They do carols by candlelight there.
Yeah, and on Sundays there's public speaking there. So we'd go down, and you know, someone would talk, and then we'd sing, and singing became part of the thing that we did. It was an era of change, and although you know the gospel is the oldest story ever told, it has to be re-articulated for every generation for it to be relevant, and that was the challenge. Yeah. That was the challenge, and I think Christian people, young people at the time said, everything's up in the air. We're going through change societally. The Vietnam War had confronted a whole range of political issues, and we were saying, how does Christianity represent itself in a way which is relevant and which is understandable by people in their language?
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the expression of that time was in the arts, wasn't it? Particularly music.
Music was a very powerful indicator of change. As a matter of fact, it was music that seemed to, you know, create a sense of belonging to young people. You know, when we were growing up, the music that we had was different. It was radical. Our parents hated it, so it was something that we liked. And as it happened, there was a number of very talented, you know, guys that I grew up with that were, you know, that tapped into that and wrote, you know, Christian songs that used the idiom of the day.
Yeah. So fast forward to, was it 1978 or so?
I think it was, yes.
1978. All my friends are sinners. This, let me tell you, Genna, this was the third coolest record in my house when I was growing up, and here you are. You're this dude here, is that right?
That's right. So that's I'm standing with Lol Tarling, and seated is Bob Wolfgram. Okay,
yeah, Bob, and he was sort of the musical genius behind it all. Is that the songwriter?
The songwriter, the singer-songwriter. Lol and Bob formed a singer-songwriting team, but
is this Lol Tarling?
That's Lol Tarling there, yeah, right. Lol Tarling there. But you know, Bob was the I guess a very high calibre of creativity, and he was the one that drove the project.
Well, let's just stop for a second and just hear just a grab from one of the songs here.
Okay.
So Genna, you know, you hear that music and I mean, now it sounds pretty tame, really, doesn't it? Hearing that record, but it's electric guitars, you know, it's drums, it's a very rock and roll.
It's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll.
And how did that go down with the church fathers?
It didn't go down at all. It didn't go down at all. It didn't go down at all. As a matter of fact, you know, Robert and Lowell got into a lot of trouble when they were studying at Avondale College, which is the Seventh-day Adventist tertiary education institution. They got into a lot of trouble for their music and the words as well. It's something that drew me to you know, being involved in it. Is that it wasn't light and fluffy. It wasn't everything's fine and everything's going well. It was actually explored the difficulty of the Christian journey,
the struggles in life,
the struggles, and didn't back away from that, you know. And I think that's the reality of how our lives pan out.
Yeah. No, you're not a musician yourself, are you?
I'm not, so don't ask me too many musical questions.
Okay, all right.
Because maybe you'll have an opportunity to interview Bob, and
you're involved in the sort of the management of or production.
Yes, so I was sort of like a manager or producer. So Bob and Lowell were doing the creative work, and I did organised the studios and the studio musicians and the cover art and so forth, and promoted the album.
Yeah. So obviously the institutional church wasn't too impressed, but what about young people in the church and outside the church? Did they connect with what you were doing?
When this first album came out, All My Friends Are Sinners, it was won the Christian Album of the Year award.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. We distributed it well, and I think in those days it sold 2,000 or 3,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
It was quite popular. I still get calls now from people who know nothing about Galilee music or Seventh-day Adventism, who say, this is the album that I grew up with, same as you've said a few minutes ago. This was a soundtrack to my life when I was growing up.
Yeah. I understand there's some plans to perhaps like remaster and re-release these recordings, is that right?
Look, there is. It's probably very gratifying that, 30 years later, 35 years later, the Adventist Church that didn't want to carry, or didn't allow these to be carried in its bookshops when they came out, I'd now say, look, this would be a really valuable addition to our, to the range of music that we carry. And we never had an opportunity to put it on CD and digitise it, and so we're looking at the possibility of doing that now and re-releasing it on iTunes and on CD.
Man, that's fascinating. I really think the sort of the Jesus movement era, the 60s and the 70s, has always been an era that has fascinated me. Just the potential of that time and the energy that was there. Do you think your generation lived up to its promise of what it was? Because you were very idealistic, weren't you?
Very, yeah.
Did you come to Earth with a bump at the end of it, or do you think your generation actually managed to achieve something and change the world, as it were?
Look, I don't think we achieved the political aims that we wanted to. Institutions are very difficult to change, and change very, very slowly. But I think what the good thing that happened in individuals' lives is that they got involved at a very personal level in talking to people about their beliefs in public areas with total strangers.
Whether that was politics or spirituality or whatever,
whatever. And I think a lot of the people that I knew from that era went on to have a very individual faith which worked for them because they'd had to sort it out for themselves in the early days. And those people now are probably the ones that are the leaders and the intellectuals in society, because in those days they spent the time to actually establish where they were and where they wanted to go. If they achieved it or not in a public sense, maybe not all of it, but in a private sense, I think they have.
Yeah, and I guess the message for the youth today is, hey, there's still some work left to do. Don't lose your idealism. Get out there and change the world.
I think you're doing it in your own way. The things that your parents and my generation started, you've picked up on it, and you've been able to articulate in a way that wasn't possible 30 years ago. There wasn't the opportunity or the venue for it. So I'm delighted.
Thanks so much for including me in the young people category, and thanks so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ken.
And you know what, Dora? Those albums were all successfully remastered right here in our studios at Adventist Media.
Awesome.
I managed to score a copy, and they even had a launch concert where Sally Hilder, who was on the front cover of that LP, she performed together with Bob Wolfgram. Wow, what a reunion. But I wasn't there.
Missed it, no way.
Disaster.
Well, Kent, you can always watch the interview again at our website, infocus.org.au.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Good one, I'll pay that. Thanks for your company on InFocus Recouched this week. God willing, we'll see you next time.
All the best.